It was not your fault but mine, and it was your heart on the line. I really f***ed it up this time, didn't I, my dear? Didn't I, my dear?
Mumford and Sons are a band from England. They're led by a guy called Marcus Mumford. The others in the band are not his sons, so the name was chosen to make it sound like an old-fashioned store of some kind, a shop. They have been described as indie folk, and they certainly go about giving a sort of semi-folk image to themselves. They were formed in London in 2007 and they're still going. They have won loads of awards and they have released 4 albums so far. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was the first album by Mumford and Sons. It was new to me, as actually most of Mumford and Sons is new to me. I've heard a couple of their songs on the radio. I'm aware that they've been around, but I've never really paid a lot of attention. So sometimes I wonder why I'm bothering to do these reviews, especially when I end up listening to something that I really don't like very much. There's a whole lot of way out things in here. And then along comes an album like this that reminds me exactly what my initial motivation was for doing these reviews, which was to discover some stuff that I didn't know that was good. So you've obviously got the impression I like this album. So let's do some description. Is it folk? Not really. So there are elements of it that have got a folkness to it. So they use some folky sounds, particularly there's use of acoustic guitar and banjo, upright bass, and a few other acoustic instruments as well. The banjo in particular, as part of the backing, is quite a distinctive sound, which does give it a kind of folky sound, but they're definitely not folk songs. So the structures to the songs are not standard structures, and they're definitely not folk structures. And the songs themselves, the content is very unfolk, in that it's not about it's not about the miller and the miller's daughter, or anything like that. It's not about life in the countryside. And generally folky, it's fairly easy to work out what's going on. Lyrically, I'll talk more about lyrically in a few minutes. Actually, I'll come back to that. There are some of the harmonies, I would say, are kind of folk in style. So I'd say it's folky style, but a bit broader than that. And definitely not folk in content. It's dark and warm. There's some really grand sounds going on here. At times there's organ, there's choral sounds, there's strings, there's even occasional brass in there as well. It's got a great dynamic range, so it goes from quiet and very subdued and then builds up to kind of massive sounding stuff. Musically, that's also done very effectively because it often uses kind of to start off with very limited notes and kind of riffs that repeat along, and then as it builds, it kind of deepens and broadens that. Marcus Mumford's voice is very distinctive. He has this kind of sound like he's I can't do it, sounding like the R's of that very, very strongly coming through. But he's got quite a croak to his voice, but it's also it's a great voice. It's very expressive. He's able to get a lot across. He does sound like he probably can't do happy songs very well because he's got quite a strong melancholy element to the tone of his voice. And the songs, so I said I'd talk about the songs. They're mostly broadly about love and relationships, but also about friendship, and about God and faith. And these are all mixed up, and they're done in such a way that you can probably read them in several different ways. And then this is all done through the lens of literary references. So there's a lot of literature in there. Not stuff that I necessarily know, because I'm not that literary myself, but reading about it, go, oh, okay, that's interesting. And as a result, it's also quite poetic. There's an intensity to the whole thing. It's got a feeling of quite a lot of depth to it in thought. There's a darkness there at times, but there's a hope as well. And it's kind of somehow manages to have this feeling of being really profound while still being quite vague, which is a great trick to pull off. My favourite song, and it was hard to pick a favourite in some ways, is the last track, which is After the Storm. And there are bits in there that I take to be very much about, taken from the Bible, from Revelation 21. It's certainly about death and potentially talking about what's beyond death, what he believes is beyond death, and maybe also his fear of dying, or certainly fear of dying, comes into it. So it's really tackling some quite deep stuff in here, and that's matched really well by the music and the grandness of the music and the kind of broad, warm depth that there is to all this backing that's going on. So it's a great marriage together of the lyrical content and of the musical content, and I love it. I've never heard this album before today. I've listened to it twice today, and there have been points where I've been really quite taken up with it and kind of been taken away with it. You're kind of lost in it. And, it's a great experience. So, obviously, I really like this album. What do you think? Please let me know in the comments below. And that's it from me for now.
There will come a time you'll see, with no more tears, and love will not break your heart, but dismiss your fears. Get over your hill and see what you find there, with grace in your heart and flower